Hello. So you're Susan Stipp, and you're professor at the University of Copenhagen in Denmark. Can you quickly describe your field of research and career path, please?
Right now I'm leading a group of interdisciplinary scientists.
Mm-hmm.
So we have physicists and chemists and biologists and engineers and geologists and mathematicians. It's really broad. And we study the interaction of fluids with mineral surfaces, so natural materials.
Okay.
And it hasn't always been that way. I started off in geology, and I was looking for answers to how we can understand contamination in the environment. And so my path of background education kept changing because I'd try one field and couldn't find the answers and then move on to something else.
Mm-hmm.
So I started in geology, hard rock geology,
Mm-hmm.
and then went on with hydrology and couldn't find a way to combine fluid flow by physical processes and chemical reactions. So then I went to Stanford and studied civil engineering with water quality, and got a little closer, but realized that with our macroscopic techniques we couldn't really see what was going on the molecular scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was the time when surface analysis was just beginning.
Okay.
And so learned some surface analysis of man-made materials and then applied it to natural materials. And that got us a little bit further yet. And then with a little bit of physics and chemistry on the side, then I was ready to really understand what was going on.
Okay.
But at that point, I was in a job where I had no access to surface and analytical equipment. So then there came the many long years of trying to build a profile that was big enough to shake loose enough money to buy the equipment we needed.
Uh-huh.
And so after about 10 years, I was in Denmark by this time. So I started off in Canada, went to California, lived in France near Geneva, worked in Geneva and then Lausanne, and then I moved to Denmark.
Okay.
And it was in Denmark that I started the slow process of building. And the bottom line is that now we have a lab with equipment that's somewhat custom designed and somewhat bought off the shelf, but it's certainly a unique collection, and we have enough young people to run it with expertise.
Okay.
So it's been a long, slow process, but
Indeed,
now
yes.
we have a lab and facilities that are really good.
Okay, thank you. So what did you enjoy the most in your career so far?
I can't put my finger on one specific thing, but I enjoy watching young people learn, and I find it fun explaining what I'm doing to people who aren't in my field, the general public, for example. And research is always a kick. You know, you find that something you've been looking for, and it's a eureka moment. You know, wow, there it is. That's really cool. But it's not one in my whole career. I mean, I couldn't put my finger on and say this period of my life was the most exciting. It's every time you get a small step on the way, a proposal through that you didn't think was going to go, some new colleague to work with. That's really a pleasure to interact with. You know, those are small things along the way.
Okay. And what did you least enjoy?
Constant fighting.
Yes.
As a woman in science, as a newcomer in the country, you have to build a new network every time you move to a new country.
Yes.
As a newcomer in a field, you have to build a new network. And the world doesn't look upon people who are interdisciplinary with very good eyes. The ideal career is you start off and you make your track and you just go that way until you do the big bang somewhere in your 50s. And I think there needs to be more understanding in science among our colleagues that we've got biology, geology, physics, chemistry, medicine, computers, engineering. You know, we've got all these disciplines, and we just keep going longer and longer on the fingers. And we get more and more specialized so that these guys can't talk to each other anymore.
Yes.
And there's all this science in between that needs to be done.
Yes.
So if you combine geology and biology, look what it's done. I mean, geobiology, it's a huge topic now.
Yes.
If you combine physics and chemistry with some geology, you get mineral science, and you just can go with that and answer important questions about environment, CO2, what are we going to do with our garbage, how are we going to keep good, clean drinking water for people who don't live in developed countries. You know, there's so much we could do if we'd be interdisciplinary.
Yes.
And so are funding agencies who want H factors. And when you apply for a position and you have to have so many publications and so much service and so forth, you know, there needs to be one more topic. You know, how can this person interact across the scientific disciplines to carry our field further? So I think that's one of the frustrations. And the other is this sort of, you know, nepotism that's everywhere. It's in Denmark, it's in the US, it's in Switzerland, it's every country I've worked in, and I'm sure it exists in other countries too. It's human behavior to protect your own, but it closes our eyes to the possibilities around.
I see.
Yeah.
So if you had another 40 or 50 years, what would you do actually?
Well, you know, we've got a huge problem with resources.
Yes.
We're running out of just about everything. And we've got a huge problem with garbage. And as the population continues to increase, we're going to have a big problem with just the basic necessities. Clean air, clean water, a place to have our children play. And so I've worked all this time trying to understand the interactions of minerals and fluids. And I think that we geochemists have ignored the organic compounds, the bio side of things. We're beginning to make progress there with biogeochemistry. I think that if I had another 50 years and the energy to learn new things, then I would try to develop organisms that could sequentially remove, sequester elements. I think there's a huge field there waiting to be developed. It's interdisciplinary, of course, but I think that there's real promise there so that we could mine our garbage dumps. I mean, I can envision pools where we have this bacteria that can grab all the tin, and this one that can grab all the lead, and this one that can grab the zinc, and so on. They've been working on this for about 10 years or more in radioactive waste treatment. So it's and there are bacteria that are very, very specific to certain metals. We have molecules in our bodies that are specific to certain metals. So I don't think it's an untractable question. I mean, I think the answer's out there. It's just going to take a lot of work. If I was starting over, that's where I'd go.
Well, that's really interesting and very practical.
Yeah, really fundamental science with a very applied and Andrew Putness taught me that with a paper he wrote in the 80s, I think it was, where he and his young people did a really, really fundamental study, and it was aimed at removing scale or inhibiting scale in oil reservoir pipes. And I thought, you know, that's what we need in science. We need fundamental understanding. How does the world work? But then we need to link it to something that somebody cares about and is willing to fund it. So I think that's fun science.
So as a woman, as a female geoscientist, how do you think the role of female geoscientists has changed during your career, and what could be still missing today?
We have problems right now in journals like Elements and the new one, Geochemical Perspectives, finding senior women to write articles or to take positions in committees or so on. There just aren't many women my age. I mean, I could name them for you on one or two hands. That's sad, but it's changing. When I did my PhD at Stanford, there was only one other woman who had done a PhD at Stanford. in my department. In my department.
Yeah.
The same was at Waterloo when I was doing my master's. You know, there just weren't any women PhD students. So of course there aren't any now in the senior levels.
Yes.
But that's changing.
Okay.
I was teaching geology at the University of Copenhagen, and it was every year, with the exception of 1 or 2, where there were more women than men. The problem is they drop out. I have some very promising young women right now who are excellent teachers, just top researchers. But they look at the way I work, the number of hours I put in, and they go running to industry or to government, where they know they've got a 9-to-5 job, and they don't have to scramble for the next grant.
Yes.
So it's partly our system that discourages women, because no matter what, women have to have the babies, and they often are the ones who take care of them for the first few years.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if the world of my granddaughter will be better. It'll be different. Things have changed, but they're a long way from where they need to be. There's no such thing as equality in some countries. In other countries, it's much better. I think Denmark's about the best country I've worked in, but it's still a long way from good.
Okay.
And there's still a lot of people in my immediate circle, at my institute, at my university, in our community. They're and it's not only the old guys that don't understand that women might have something between their ears. It's also some young ones. And that, I think, is sad. But we just keep pushing on and doing the best we can. There was an old woman when I was starting who told me, well, dear, if you're going to do anything, you have to be better than the best man to even get in the door. And then when you get in the door, they'll throw you out because they're jealous. And it's not always true, but often it is, and that's too bad.
So this year you've been honored Geochemical Fellow of the European Association of Geochemistry and the Geochemical Society. What does it mean to you?
I'm honored. I was surprised, and certainly pleased to be named by your community is an honor. I'm not sure what effect it'll have on my career, but it's nice. And I think of it also as, I was telling my young folks, I've got quite a group of young people here, my group members, and I was telling them last night that, you know, this is a personal award for me, but really it's also for the group.
Okay. Because
if it wasn't for the good people that I'm working with right now, and in the past, you know, you can't do anything alone. You need.
That's true.
You need support. You need people that work with you. My friends in the community, the ones I see at Goldsmith every year, and we go dancing. Those are what makes life fun and makes science possible. Because in these days, Leonardo da Vinci and Newton and Dirac and, you know, Einstein, all those guys, they worked pretty much alone. But you can't do science alone anymore. You need machines, you need computational skills, you need thoughts from other disciplines. Nobody can know everything.
Yes.
So this award is an award also for my colleagues and my students.
Okay. So talking about students, what advice would you have for them?
Get a mentor.
Okay.
Get a mentor early, and it should be someone who's older, who's past the point in their career where they need to make a name for themselves.
Okay.
And it doesn't matter whether it's a man or woman with a man or woman mentor, that is irrelevant. It needs to be somebody who cares about you as a person, and it needs to be somebody who knows the system, who has a network, who has a feel for what you ought to do. And a good mentor doesn't advise. They only offer experience and give hope. Suggestions. You know, they hold up the mirror so you can see yourself, and I think that's something that once I found out about having older people to talk with, I felt a lot more comfortable moving forward. I still made the decisions, but I had input from people who had experience.
Okay.
And you don't just need one person that you go and talk with. You can talk with this person for this kind of topic, topics and that person for other topics. And,
Okay.
and then maybe you've got one that is a good friend who's had children and helped to bring, you know, who can offer suggestions about how they raise their children that you can maybe use. You know, each aspect of your life might have a different,
Absolutely.
friend, mentor. Yeah, so I think that was something that would have helped me a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing is my grandmother, stubborn little woman, don't give up, just keep pushing.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's another thing, don't give up. There's a way, you just got to find it.
Yes. Thank you so much for your time, Susan.
You're welcome.
Thank you.